Hello crafty friends, my name's Alicia, but you can call me Crafty Al. And in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I made my first set of cards using the July 2025 SheetLoad of Cards printable. I hope you'll stick around to see how they're made and get a few tips along the way. Welcome, or perhaps welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you're here today. Yesterday I stopped by with a look at the brand new SheetLoad of Cards July 2025. In that video I told you how you could download the free printable, and I will have that linked in the description box below. Today I'm back to show you how I made my first set, and my creative team will be joining me with their cards as well. So make sure to see what they've created, that you use the playlist linked in the end card at the end of this video or in the description box below. I know that everyone, including our two brand new team members, Lauren and Tracy, would love for you to stop by, see what they created, and leave them some love. I know that I'm super excited to hop around later today to see their sets. As I start the process, I will tell you about the products and tools I'm using, but as always, if I ever leave you with any questions, feel free to leave those down in that comment section below, and I'll get back to you just as soon as I can. Let's get crafty! Before I get started, I wanted to stop by with a special channel member shout out. I would like to say welcome to membership to my newest paper trimmer level member, Sue Downing. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you as well to all of my channel members. You helped to keep me creating here on YouTube and the last 2 years of SheetLoad of Cards free for all subscribers. If you're ever interested in finding out more about the perks of channel membership, you can click on the join button below this video or the link in the description box below. I will be getting started today by cutting my 2 pieces of pattern paper per the cutting guides. This edition does leave you with some scraps left over, and I've given some suggestions on how you can maybe use that on the inside of your cards. For my pattern papers, I chose 2 pieces from Doodlebug Designs' Be Happy collection. These pattern papers have branding strips at the bottom, so the first thing I'm going to do is cut those off. And now I'm going to pull back in the printable, and you'll see at the bottom piece C's are only 1/2 inch tall. So to make it easier to trim those, that's what I'm going to start with. I just cut 2 strips right off the bottom at that height. Now I'm going to cut some columns. The first 2 are at 4.5 inches wide, and then the third one I just leave at what is left over for those little pieces. Once those columns are cut, I'm going to take the first 2 on the left, the 4.5 inch wide pieces, and cut each of those into 3 pieces that are 3.25 inches tall. There is that small piece at the bottom left over, so I set that to the side for now, and later you'll see how I use the scraps on the inside of my cards. The next pieces I'm going to cut are from that small column that was left over on the right, and these are going to be for piece B's. For each card you'll need 4, so altogether you have to cut 24 of these pieces. I started by cutting 6 rows that were 1 inch tall, and again there is some left over at the bottom of this that I just held on to for later. Once all of the rows were cut, I'm going to bring those pieces back in and cut them into fourths at 3/4 inch wide. For the last couple of cuts on that piece, I did bring in a piece of Scotch removable tape since my fingers really couldn't hold it in place while I made the cut. I will be able to use this same piece of tape the entire little crafty session, and it doesn't ruin that pattern paper at all. Now keep in mind, this is exactly the width you need it, so try to make your cuts as close to 3/4 inch as you can. But if some of yours end up slightly less wide, that's okay, because that center piece does cover up the gap. And finally, for the pattern paper pieces, I'm going to finish cutting C. And for this, you're going to bring back in those skinny little strips that we cut at the very beginning, and you're going to cut each piece into 3 sections that are 3.25 inches wide. And while I am giving you lots of different dimensions, don't worry about writing these down or trying to remember them. Check out yesterday's debut video and download the printable for yourself. While I cut the second piece of pattern paper in that same exact way, I wanted to take a minute to recognize some special channel members. In the month of June, I had some of them earn their 1-year membership badge. So scrolling up on screen now are their names. Thank you so much to each of you for your continued support. It really does mean the world to me. CS1 will be used for your sentiment or focal point. I'm not going to cut this piece today because I am using the free bonus printable I created, but all you'll need to do is cut 3 columns at 3 1/4 inches wide and then cut each of those into 4 pieces that are 2 inches tall. For CS2, you'll want 1 1/2 pieces of cardstock in a coordinating color, and these are going to be the mats for the sentiment piece. I chose a black cardstock, and I'm going to start by cutting the full piece into 3 columns that are 3 1/2 inches wide. I'm going to take that half a sheet and do the same thing. Then once those are cut down, I'm going to rotate it and cut it into 3 pieces that are 2 1/4 inches tall. While I work on cutting all of these, I would like to know what theme or pattern paper collection are you going to use for your first July 2025 sheetload of cards? Let me know down below in that comment section. And last but not least are the 12A2 card bases. For this, you'll want to take 6 pieces of cardstock, cut those in half, and then fold each piece in half. For mine, I just grabbed some I had already made in my stash. I do still have a little bit of cutting to do, and that is for my Buzz and Buy Sentiment Printable. I could only fit 10 on each sheet, so I did end up printing myself 2 copies. Now, if you are a channel member and you would like access to this printable, check out the membership tab later today or the monthly blog. I did set these up with crop marks so you can cut them to the correct size, and for me, I'm going to start by cutting the sheet in half at 4 1/4 inches wide. Now, because sometimes my printer pulls the cardstock in weirdly, I am going to take a minute and line up this first cut so that even if the cardstock's a little bit crooked, I'm still going to get a straight cut between each of those crop marks. Once that's cut in half, I'm going to cut a 1/2 inch off the top and 1 inch off the right side. Then all I need to do is cut these to 2 inches tall. Again, for those first few cuts, make sure to check out those crop marks. You might be wondering why the sentiments aren't quite centered, and that's because I left room for that little pattern paper strip at the bottom. I finished cutting down the rest of the sentiments. I did end up with some extra, and I might have to make a quick trip back to my local scrapbook store, Scrapbook Haven, to pick up some more of this fun bee paper. Now that all of the cutting is done, it's time to start assembly, so I brought back in my piece C's, and I'm going to add those to the bottom of the sentiment. Now on this first one, I just showed you how it's totally possible to do this by hand. I just place the pattern paper strip about 1/8 of an inch up from the bottom, and then it fills that card left to right. The next way I want to show you is with a helper. So I brought in my mini Scor-Buddy. It has that little ledge. Now if you don't have a Scor-Buddy, you could use a stamp positioner, a paper trimmer, just something that has a little lip. And what I'm going to do is add adhesive to the back of another pattern paper strip, and then I'm going to make sure my sentiment piece is snug down at the bottom of the Scor-Buddy. Now I can just butt the pattern paper strip right up against that same ledge and just kind of let it fall into place. You'll see when I hold those two up together, you really couldn't tell a difference. I just think for myself, using that Scor-Buddy as a helper goes much quicker. Now, if you're like me, you might have some pieces where the pattern paper strip is a little longer than the sentiment piece. I just took a few seconds once I had these all together and trimmed off any overhang. While I have my Scor-Buddy out, I'm going to have it help me add the pattern paper piece bees to the front of the card bases. These are each about 3/4 of an inch away from the top or bottom. I did show this last month, but I just want to share it again. To help ensure that my pieces are nice and straight across from each other, I cut a scrap of cardstock that was 5.5 inches wide by 3/4 of an inch tall. I'm going to add a little adhesive, a little tape runner to the back of that, and remove most of the tack with my fingers. I'm going to put my card base right down in the corner of the Scor-Buddy and then add my spacer down in that same corner, just trying to get everything nice and aligned with each other. Now, using some liquid glue so I have some wiggle time, I added that to the back of one of my pattern paper piece bees. Then I'm going to put that right up against the spacer and then down against the plastic ledge. To add the second piece at that side, I'm going to rotate my card base around, again just so both sides are right up against the ledge, and I'm going to add the second piece. Now, if your pattern paper does have a direction, you'll want to keep in mind where the fold is before you place each one of your pattern papers. Now, because we took most of the tack away from that spacer, you can remove it from the right side and then place it over on the left, again placing it right down in the corner, and repeat that same process for the last two pattern paper bees. Now, if you don't want to mess with the spacer and you don't necessarily want to eyeball it by hand, there is another option, and that is to bring in your print. As long as you print this out at full size or 100%, the sketch is the same size as your card. So you can hold your card base up to the printable and let that help you figure out where to put your pattern paper piece bees. Let me know down in that comment section below which way you think you'll put your cards together this month. Eyeball it, spacer, or use the printable. For myself, I use the Scor-Buddy and the spacer to put the rest of my card fronts together. Once all of those little pieces were in place, I brought back in my sentiments and their CS2 mat, and I adhered all of these together. For these pieces, there is a nice border all the way around. I just did my best to center everything nicely. I finished getting all of my sentiment pieces matted, and then I brought back in pattern paper piece A, and for these I switched the two patterns up. So whichever pattern paper was on the little strip at the bottom, I used the opposite for the background. Now this border is a little wider, it's a 1/2 inch all the way around, so for this I just do my best to get everything nice and straight and centered. You could always make yourself another spacer if you think that that would help. Making sheet loads of cards does take a lot of adhesive, and my ATG ran out in the middle of me making this set. Recently, I made a dedicated video that shows you how I replace my adhesive, so you can check out the description box below or up in the corner now for a link. Also in that video and down in my related products list, I do have an exclusive discount code at Tape Jungle. If you don't already give their adhesive a try, I hope that you'll consider. I finished adhering all of those together, and then I brought back in my card bases, and now I'm going to be adding my sentiment pieces to the front center of each of those. Again, this will cover up the gaps in between the pattern paper piece bees, and it is a bit of a wider border once again, so just do your best to get everything nice and straight across and centered. While I was off camera finishing this step, I did go ahead and use some of the scraps of pattern paper to decorate the inside of the cards. And here's a look at what I did. And now to finish the cards off, I'm going to add some of these enamel dots from Gina Marie Designs. The color of the gold ones kind of reminded me of honey, so I thought it was perfect for the bee themed cards. And here are some close-up looks at the finished set. I hope you enjoyed seeing how I put together my first set of cards using the July 2025 sheet load and got a few tips along the way. If you did, as always, a thumbs up is appreciated. Now don't forget to go see what the creative team made this month by using the end card here in just a minute or the link in the description box below. Until my next one, I hope you're all having a crafty day. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch all the way to the end of the video. I hope now you'll consider clicking on one of the videos or playlists I have linked above. And if you are interested in any of the products or tools I used in today's video, I do have some links in the description box below.